Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
This year at Six Flags, answer the call to Batman, the ride. Imagine the air below, the sky above. You are Batman. When you fly the world's only suspended outside looping nothing like it on Earth experience. Not even at Disney. Come, answer the call to Batman, the ride. Only at Six Flags Great America.
When you think about the most important roller coasters, record-breaking rides like Magnum XL 200, Millennium Force, and Top Thrill Dragster probably come to mind. These three all broke heightened speed records at some point in history. But what if I told you there was another roller coaster that is equally important? This coaster transformed roller coaster design and propelled a manufacturer to the top of the coaster world. In 1992, Six Flags Great America debuted Batman the Ride, the world's first suspended outside looping roller coaster, created by Bolliger and Mabillard. Batman was a prototype inverted coaster which took the world by storm, becoming one of the most successful roller coaster models of all time. 33 seasons later, the original inverted coaster is running just as good, if not better, than ever before. So many people look at Batman and its numerous clones as repetitive, not stacking up to the inverted giant seen today. But I'm here to tell you why that's not the case. This video serves as a review and analysis of this legendary, groundbreaking, and important coaster that helped pave the way for B&M's success today. Here's why Batman the Ride is B&M's most important roller coaster. Back in the late 80s, Six Flags Great America was looking to add another signature coaster to its growing lineup. This time, they would reach out to two former Giovanola employees, Walter Bolliger and Claude Mabillard, who recently formed their own company, Bolliger and Mabillard, or B&M. At the time, B&M had no plans to continue making roller coasters. However, Six Flags Great America's lead engineer, Robert Mamp, decided to contact them regarding a new roller coaster. Mamp had previously worked with Mabillard and Bolliger on the park's Z-Force roller coaster, which is where he got the idea to reach out to them for their latest ride. And in 1990, Six Flags Great America debuted B&M's first ever roller coaster, Iron Wolf, which opened as the tallest and fastest stand-up coaster in the world. This would be the start of a long-standing relationship between Great America and B&M. Six Flags Great America officially had their foot in the door with Bolliger and Mabillard. So, I mentioned Robert Mamp as being the one to start the park's relationship with B&M. But in the case of Batman, there's another integral person that truly made the ride and concept of an inverted coaster come to fruition. Enter into the equation Jim Wintrode, the former park president and general manager of Six Flags Great America. Wintrode was the park president from 1987 to 2003. After the success of Iron Wolf, Wintrode was looking to add another one of B&M's coasters to the park. This time, Wintrode wanted a ride that would shatter the amusement industry. Jim was intrigued by Arrow's suspended coaster model. On the Arrow model, trains were suspended below the track and swung from side to side along the ride course. The biggest downside of the suspended coaster was its inability to travel through loops or other inversions. This is where Wintrode conjured up the idea of a ride that could do so. Wintrode was in talks with other manufacturers about his concept, but they all declined, stating they couldn't make it work. At some point during the process of building Iron Wolf, Wintrode introduced his idea to B&M. A few months after this conversation, Walter Bolliger told Wintrode, "We can do it." Shortly after, in 1990, the concept and planning of Batman the Ride began. So, if it weren't for Robert Mamp, Walter Bolliger, Claude Mabillard, or Jim Wintrode, we might have never seen the B&M inverted coaster so soon, or even at all. At this point, Batman the Ride as we know it was still very much a concept coaster coming to life. Around the same time planning began, Time Warner became the majority owner of Six Flags, the parent company which operated Six Flags Great America. Talks began between Six Flags upper management and park president Jim Wintrode about using Warner Brothers' exclusive licensing to theme Great America's newest roller coaster. Because of this, Time Warner took over the creative control for the theme of the new coaster. Six Flags CEO Bob Pittman decided the new ride would be themed after 1989's blockbuster movie, Batman. Wintrode was not initially pleased with this decision, as Time Warner basically swooped into the project at the last second, a project that Wintrode had been a part of since the beginning. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, and this decision ultimately worked in the ride's and park's favor. Batman the Ride would become the park's most elaborately themed coaster to date, and in 2025, this still holds true. As a matter of fact, in the latter half of the 2024 season, Great America's electronics and maintenance team have brought the theming of this ride back to life. More on that later. At the end of the 1991 season, Six Flags Great America said goodbye to their Schwarzkopf shuttle loop, Tidal Wave. This, of course, to make way for Batman the Ride. Batman would be located on the former site of Tidal Wave in the park's Yankee Harbor section. As of 2022, the area is now unfortunately known as DC Universe, but that's a subject for another video. Batman was custom built to fit the narrow plot of land. Sandwiched between the park's backstage corridor and the Yankee Harbor Midway, Batman the Ride began to take shape. Being that this was a prototype, B&M made sure to cover all bases to ensure the ride would track successfully. According to Mark Volachek, B&M had spare tracks set aside to replace the two corkscrews if trains couldn't maneuver them properly. Needless to say, B&M's design went according to plan, and the extra track was not needed. As the construction of Batman's track and structure was being completed, the ride's immersive theming project was underway. Batman the Ride's theming was developed by iTech Productions. Many sections of the ride's queue were modeled after the actual set designs from the 1989 Batman film. Here is a scale model that was developed to showcase the queue and station of Batman the Ride. The main portion of the queue is divided into 4 distinct sections: Gotham City Park, the alley, the storm drain, and the ride station, the Batcave. As guests make their way through the queue, the experience starts off bright and pleasant, quickly turning into chaos as they maneuver through the crime-ridden alleys of Gotham City and eventually into the Batcave. To foreshadow, these wouldn't be the only sections of Batman's queue. Guests begin their experience by entering into Gotham City Park through an archway, passing a Bruce Wayne plaque and winding through pathways with nature-themed features and hidden sound effects, like birds chirping and children playing. The park features a birdhouse and a water fountain. The queue's trash cans are even labeled with a Gotham City Public Works marking. On the back wall in the park, there's an Urban Renewal Project funding plaque that pays homage to Bolliger, Mabiard, Wintrode, and the park's maintenance director, Gary Pullman. The cityscape of Gotham was redone in 2008 to how it looks today. At the back of the park, a Gotham Public Works banner signals a transition into the alleys of Gotham City. The environment becomes darker, featuring a wrecked police car, leaking water fountain, and crumbling infrastructure, reflecting Gotham's crime-ridden atmosphere. Originally, there was graffiti plastered on the walls and trash ridden throughout the alley. This was eventually removed as it encouraged some guests to add their own graffiti. Radio chatter, police sirens, and gunshots can be heard from this section of the queue. After navigating several switchbacks, they enter a drain tunnel marked Broad Avenue Storm Drain Access, featuring a slow-turning fan, smoke, cave-dripping sounds, and more. The storm drain leads guests into the Batcave. I've always loved the sign that stands right before the station, telling riders to keep their heads back and remove all earrings. There's even an LED sign telling you to enjoy your ride. How nice. Once inside the Batcave, guests are encouraged by Alfred, Batman's butler, to board the rescue vehicle, which is the ride's train. The park actually got Alfred's actor, Michael Goff, to voice the original spiels for Batman the Ride. During its first few seasons, smoke would emit in the station for every dispatched train. The Batcave is an impressive sight. An interesting fact about the station is that the brake run and transfer area were originally uncovered. I can't even imagine what this would look like, as the dark and grim aesthetic of the station definitely wouldn't be the same without that area covered. Sometime between the ride's opening and the 1993 season, the covering was added, completing the effect they were going for. Batman's trains even used to feature some theming, which was removed around 2013, I believe. They resembled mechanical pieces of the rescue vehicle the train was supposed to be. Additionally, this is the only inverted coaster, to my knowledge, that runs without its wheel covers. These were also removed around the same time period for, quote-unquote, easier maintenance access. The wheel covers strangely sat in the transfer area until 2024. Back to the Batcave. On the unload side of the station is a replica of Michael Keaton's Batsuit. I absolutely love Batman's queue and station, and it happens to be my favorite in the park. It perfectly encapsulates what I would imagine a real-life Batcave would be. Hanging from the center of the load side of the station is a giant Batman logo. Also, pumped throughout the queue and station is a mix of Danny Elfman's original score from the film, as well as songs from Prince's soundtrack, also from the 1989 Batman movie. The soundtrack heard through the queue really adds suspense and gets riders pumped for the ride they are about to embark on. As riders exit the Batcave, they pass by a broken section of the Gotham streets that the ride flies over as they exit down the winding ramp. Throughout the years, many of Batman the Ride's special effects stopped working or were outright removed. This detracted from the overall experience of the ride. Batman's theming was a shell of its former self. However, at the tail end of the 2024 season, just in time for Fright Fest, the park's electronics and maintenance team sought out to restore Batman's effects, and even make them better. Led by Matt Katzenmeyer, the electronics, ride controls, and maintenance team installed 167 new lighting fixtures, brand new speakers and sound system, brought back the fog during dispatches, and even restored the original Alfred spiel. Almost everything I mentioned is synchronized with the ride's dispatches. You have no idea how happy I was to see these effects make a return. I truly felt like I was back in 1992. Shout out to Matt, the maintenance teams, and park president John Craniac for making this happen. It really transformed the entire ride experience, bringing the theming and immersion back into Batman the Ride. Alright, back to 1992. As crews were putting the finishing touches on the ride, Great America was preparing to open Batman the Ride to the public. Buildings surrounding the ride were rethemed to match the Batman aesthetic. The adjacent flat ride, the Lobster, was rethemed to East River Crawler and later painted black and purple to fit the darker ambiance brought by Batman the Ride. A replica Batmobile was the centerpiece of the new subsection of Yankee Harbor. It used to stand smack in the middle of where DC's supervillain Swings is placed today. The Batmobile was relocated to the side of the swings when Whirligig was moved there to make way for vertical velocity in 2001. An updated Batmobile replaced the original in 2022. However, the park still has the original stored backstage. Several days before unveiling the ride to the general public, the park hosted a VIP grand opening event for Batman the Ride. Great America's entertainment team put on a dazzling show where attendees had a fine dining experience in front of a live band. This was all part of the show. While this took place in Hometown Square, the scene was set somewhere in Gotham City. Things quickly took a turn for the worse as a toxic gas was released into the air. The event's MC could only cry for help from Batman, as he was the only hope to save the city.
Save us, Batman!
Guests were rushed from their dinner into the storm drain before finding their way to the Batcave to become some of the first riders on Batman. The true first riders, however, were Jim Wintrode and Walter Bolliger. It was only fitting that the pair that made this ride come to life were the first ones to ride. Finally, after a soft opening, Batman the Ride debuted to the world on May 9th, 1992. The world's first inverted coaster became an instant success.
It's the best! It's the best! It's so good! Batman is the best!
Locals and coaster fanatics from all over the world flocked to Six Flags Great America to experience the exhilarating new attraction. Wait times for Batman the Ride commonly exceeded 3 hours on any given day during its opening season. And actually, this would last for quite a few years. Batman's line would stretch all the way back to Orland's Place and even as far as Carousel Plaza. Remember the other Batman queues I mentioned before? Well, these are it. Batman the Ride featured a total of 4 entrances and queue blocks, the first being the ride's main entrance and queue, which I described before. The second entrance was located near the main entrance and around the corner from an adjacent snack stand. This led into the main Overflow Queue, which still stands today. For Batman the Ride's first decade of operation, this Overflow Queue was full almost every day. The Overflow is actually still used pretty frequently during Fright Fest. The third entrance was located in Mardi Gras, which was actually Orland's Place back when Batman opened. This entrance began right at the beginning of the old bridge into Yankee Harbor. This section of the queue began by passing next to the defunct Cajun Cliffhanger. Once crossing a small pond, it wrapped around the backside of East River Crawler and its queue, dumping guests right at the beginning of the second entrance, so each section of the queue would be combined. Most of this queue was removed with the construction of the Joker roller coaster and the demolition of the East River Crawler and Jester's Wild Ride plots of land. It was also pretty hard to find footage of this third queue. I actually remember walking back there, probably when I wasn't supposed to in the early 2010s. When Jester's Wild Ride was added, the entrance was slightly moved, tucked in the corner by the current Mardi Gras stage and low sensory building. Today, the entrance is still visible, although it's been overtaken by the foliage and is very hard to take a look at. This extra queue space was 100% needed due to the success of this ride. Jim Wintrode, B&M, and Six Flags Great America hit a grand slam with Batman the Ride. My mom used to always tell me how she would wait 3 to 4 hours for Batman when it first opened, and I never believed her as a kid. But, as you know, Mom is always right. Guests would frequently comment that Batman was the most astounding and insane ride in the world. After all this time, I'm sure there are still people who think that way. Alright, I think it's about time we get into the ride specifications. Batman the Ride stands at a seemingly unimpressive height of 100 feet, with a drop of 84.5 feet. Batman roars through its 2,683 feet of track at a top speed of 50 miles per hour. Batman sends riders up to 4 Gs throughout many points of the ride. Batman is wicked intense. From dispatch to the brake run, Batman the Ride lasts for 1 minute and 45 seconds. The actual ride experience is about 40 seconds, excluding the lift hill. Having operated this attraction, I've seen Batman absolutely hauling, clocking in as fast as 38 seconds at times. The ride layout is straightforward, but action-packed. For a prototype, it's insane that B&M designed this ride to flip upside down a total of 5 times, and each inversion absolutely slaps. After the first drop, Batman flips riders into the first of 2 vertical loops. A unique heartline spin, known as a 0G roll, follows, which provides riders with 3 seconds of weightlessness. Riders are then immediately flipped upside down again through a second vertical loop. Next is an intense 300-degree upward spiral, which leads to a high-off-the-ground turnaround, giving riders a second to gather their thoughts before plummeting back through a wing-over, which is basically a corkscrew but flatter. Afterwards is a high-speed bank turn, and then one final wing-over before barreling into the brake run and returning to the Batcave. Batman the Ride operates with 2 trains with 8 rows of 4-across seating, carrying a total of 32 passengers each. Batman is another one of those rides that can absolutely chew through people, yielding a high hourly capacity. High capacities would be, and still are, a staple of B&M's roller coasters. When Batman the Ride opened, it sported a color scheme of black track with silver rails and black supports. In 2004, it was repainted to its current color scheme of yellow track and dark blue supports. The paint was touched up in 2009, fully repainted in 2015, and was most recently fully repainted in 2024. Batman is looking so fresh after its recent paint job. While the all-black does look sick, I actually love Batman the Ride's yellow and blue color scheme. It just pops against the Great America skyline. Alright, I think it's about time I give my thoughts on Batman the Ride. After experiencing the captivating queue, riders will board one of 2 trains, aka the rescue vehicles, in the Batcave. Immediately after dispatching, the ride sends you up its 100-foot tall lift. It's a pretty slow ride to the top, giving riders a moment to take in the views of the surrounding area and contemplate their decision to ride. At the crest of the lift is a signature B&M pre-drop before the ride swoops you to the left and down the 84.5-foot drop. The whip here is especially insane in the back rows. The bottom out of this drop is so tight, leading to an uber-intense moment of positive Gs. Many people will start to gray out at this point already. For those wondering what it means to gray out, this is when you start to lose your vision because of an intense moment on a ride. This is temporary and is pretty much a precursor to fainting or blacking out. The only major invert I haven't ridden in America is Silver Bullet at Knott's, and I have to say, no other invert has a drop this intense at the bottom. That actually goes for every valley throughout the ride. They are all exceptionally intense. After the drop, the train hurdles you into the first vertical loop. This will be a common theme, but this loop is also very intense. The valley immediately following the loop is also tight and makes me gray out every single time. Next, you fly into a first-of-its-kind 0G roll. This is probably my favorite moment on the ride, as you are whipped through it, completely weightless, all while experiencing some nasty lateral forces. The shaping of the 0G roll is only found on inverts, and Batman's is my favorite iteration of it. You're weightless for around 3 full seconds here. I can never get enough of this element. I'm usually still recovering from the immense amount of positives at this point, making the element even crazier. Following is Batman's second loop, which, again, provides some nice sustained G-forces. Fun fact, the bottom of the second loop is where the on-ride photo camera would snap your flick back in the day. After more positives, you're truly wondering what the hell you are experiencing. Batman then sends riders through an ultra-intense upward helix, banking to the left. This is the other moment on the ride where I always gray out. It is by far the most intense moment of the ride. Up to this point, Batman the Ride has been utterly ruthless. It's got to be the most intense stretch of any coaster out there, especially because each element is so tight with no let up to this point. It's all gas, no brakes. As a whole, Batman's pacing is surreal, right on par with many other legendary roller coasters. I love the foot-tingling sensation often felt here, as blood is constantly rushing from your feet to your head and vice versa throughout the whole ride. After the helix, riders are finally given a moment to breathe as the ride climbs up to the right. This serves as the midway point of the ride, setting up the finale. I'm actually quite thankful for this section because I honestly believe the ride would be too intense for most people without this short break. It's the only moment on Batman the Ride where the action is paused, but it's much needed. Batman then dives down to the right before flipping you into the first wing-over. B&M perfected this element. It's fast, whippy, and disorienting. Most newer inverts feature a smoothed-out version of the wing-over, which doesn't deliver to the same standard. Batman's wing-overs are most similar to the one found on Flight Deck at California's Great America, which was the second B&M invert ever built. The feeling of the wing-over also slightly differs based on what side of the train you're sitting on. I think I slightly prefer the left side of the train on Batman as a whole, but it doesn't really matter for the wing-over, since the following one flips you in the other direction. It's the best of both worlds sitting on the end seats. After the first wing-over, you're sent rising into a banked right-hand turn before diving beneath ground level into the final inversion, the second wing-over. Just like the first, this wing-over is extremely whippy and intense. You'll then pass over the pond that Batman sits over, before rising to the left and snapping into the brake run. Once you hit those final brakes, you can finally regain your composure and reflect on the awesome ride that you've just experienced. After all, you did just help Batman save the city. I totally love listening to people's reactions once the ride hits the brakes. I've actually taken note of some of the things I've heard recently, including, "Oh my god, yo, I forgot how fun of a ride that is. That seemed extra fast this time." And even, "Whoa, that's intense," repeated about 8 times. Anyway, you can tell just how ridiculous this ride is based off the reactions alone. Through and through, Batman the Ride is a very smooth attraction. This 33-year-old roller coaster even runs smoother than the park's new for 2025 B&M, Wrath of Rakshasa. The only headbanging you might experience on Batman is during the 2 wing-overs. The trick is to keep your head forward instead of against the headrest. There is also not a bad seat on the ride. While I prefer the back row because of the extra whip, each row on Batman provides the same intense experience. Batman the Ride has easily become one of my most ridden attractions over the last 10 years. I can never get enough of the action-packed, intense ride that Batman gives. It's pure fun and always a challenge to see how many times I can stay on without needing a break. Batman is definitely not for the faint of heart. I easily rank Batman number 2 in the park, even over rides like Goliath and Max Force. You could even argue that Batman is a better ride than Raging Bull, which is my number 1 at the park. And if I weren't biased towards Raging Bull, Batman just might be my number 1. It honestly comes down to what you like in a coaster. In fact, Six Flags Great America's Batman the Ride is my overall favorite invert. I'd take this over Alpengeist, Montu, and even Afterburn, which are all taller, faster, and longer. Batman is the perfect answer to the age-old question, does size really matter? No, it doesn't. Besides Montu's Batwing and Alpengeist's Cobra Roll, the rest of those coasters do not match the same intensity as Batman. You feel every single bit of Batman's layout, and because of its compact nature, you definitely feel like you go just as fast as the other inverted masterpieces. Now, I do have to admit, not each Batman clone runs the same as the original at Great America. This layout has been cloned a total of 11 times, which speaks to its popularity. While they are all intense rides, they do not all deliver the same experience. For example, Six Flags Great Adventures Batman, along with the one at Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags St. Louis, are a few of the weaker ones that I have personally experienced. On the other hand, Six Flags Over Georgia's Batman the Ride runs most similar to the one at Great America. Many people say that Over Georgia has the most intense Batman clone, which it is a pretty wild ride, but I actually think Great America's has a slight edge. Not only that, but the Great America version is the original. It's not a clone. Having been designed for the specific plot of land it sits in, Six Flags Great America's Batman clears the other clones in terms of its setting. It even has the best theming of all its clones. I always dislike seeing the Batman clones lumped into one big group when people rank inverts. Each individual is unique in its own way and should be ranked accordingly. But I digress. Batman the Ride is definitively my favorite inverted coaster. The ferocity, the theming, the aura, and the history of this ride cannot be beat. Objectively, I'd rank Batman a 10 out of 10. Hats off to B&M, Jim Wintrode, and Six Flags Great America for bringing this attraction and ride model to life. Because of Batman the Ride's significance and impact on the coaster world, it was awarded landmark status by the American Coaster Enthusiast, known as ACE, in 2005. The plaque stands proudly just outside the main entrance. Batman's impact can be understood across multiple dimensions: engineering, industry influence, and guest experience. The inverted coaster design marked a turning point in coaster engineering. Prior to Batman, most innovations revolved around taller drops and faster speeds. Batman the Ride showed that a coaster could be intense, smooth, and compact without needing to be the biggest and baddest, just like Cedar Point's Maverick. As I mentioned earlier, due to its critical and commercial success, Batman the Ride became one of the most cloned coaster models around the world. Nearly a dozen Six Flags parks adopted nearly identical versions of the ride, and the inverted coaster model itself became a staple at amusement parks around the world. It's B&M's most installed model at 32 current installations. I'd argue that Batman the Ride cemented B&M's reputation as a premier coaster manufacturer. And while Batman surely isn't the most extravagantly themed roller coaster, it also helped theme parks move beyond coaster as a ride into coaster as an experience, which is key, especially on rides like Velocicoaster. Batman was among the first high-thrill rides to take immersion seriously outside of Disney and Universal parks. Speaking to the ride's popularity, Jim Wintrode stated that annual attendance was steadily around 2.5 million guests per year, and the year of Batman the Ride, we did 3.1 million. 500,000 more people came to Six Flags Great America to ride Batman. Shout out to Wintrode and B&M. Before I move on to the more technical aspects of the ride, I'd like to add an interesting note. This honestly feels like a fever dream, but in 2013, Six Flags Great America ran Batman the Ride backwards. I seriously can't believe this was even a thing. The Six Flags chain ordered a special chassis in order to make this happen. They would travel around the country, providing a backwards experience for many of the Batman clones. Six Flags Great America was the first park to get this experience, and it lasted for 2 months before being shipped to the next park. I can't recall when this ended, but I don't think it's been around for at least the last 8 years or so. I mean, it only ever lasted at Great America for those 2 months in 2013. I remember riding Batman backwards and thinking it was completely nuts. It's the only ride I can recall only being able to stomach once and not be able to ride for the rest of the day. It was such a wild and surreal experience. Alright nerds, let's dive into a technical analysis of Batman the Ride. As I mentioned, I've had the pleasure of operating Batman the Ride over the course of about 5 years, and was even the lead of this attraction for a season. Operationally, Batman is as simple as it gets. This somewhat changed in 2022 when the ride was reprogrammed and given a new control system, but it's basically remained the same since 1992. When running 2 trains, which is almost always the case, Batman the Ride has a theoretical capacity of 1,440 riders per hour. With 1 train, Batman can reach up to 700 riders per hour. I've actually never seen Batman hit its theoretical capacity, and I've operated this thing with some amazing crews. So maybe this figure was determined back in the 90s when rules were less strict, people were slower, and operations were faster. A good hour at Batman nowadays is around 30 cycles per hour. If you account for empty seats, I would estimate that Batman sees, on average, around 850 riders per hour. Since 2023, that number is actually probably less, but I'll speak to that in a bit. If you take a look at the ride's block zones, you'll see that they are pretty straightforward. When running in automatic mode, Batman the Ride consists of a station block, lift block, and the brake run block, which is comprised of the service brakes, safety brakes, and transfer track. When the ride is running in manual mode, each of the individual control points that make up the brake run become their own block. When Batman the Ride opened, it featured a single-speed lift motor that actually ran faster than the motor used today. Sometime in the 2000s, Batman was upgraded with a variable speed lift motor, which runs at a slightly slower speed, giving operators a few extra seconds to prepare the next train for dispatch. Batman's dispatch interval is simple. Crews can dispatch a train once the previous train begins to enter the brake run. This gives crews roughly 65 seconds in order to meet the minimum interval. I previously brought up that Batman's ridership numbers are probably lower now compared to just a few years ago. This is because of the ride's current programming and where the train currently parks or stacks in the brake run. In Batman's original programming, trains would park at the end of the safety brake. This wasn't that big of a deal because back then, the train in the safety brake would start to move as soon as the train in the station began dispatching. Remember, the brake run control points, including the transfer track, were all part of Batman's brake run block. I want to point out that the train on the brake run could still stop on the transfer track if there was some sort of issue in the station where the dispatch were to be halted. For 29 years, the previous train stacked in the safety brake would roll into the station just as the dispatching train fully engaged with the lift chain. This allowed for quick wait times between the train dispatching out of the station and the next train parking in the station. This took trains approximately 13 seconds to park in the station after the previous train had dispatched. In this footage from 2016, you can see this in action. When Batman was reprogrammed in 2022, trains would no longer park on the safety brakes. Rather, they would park on the transfer track, just feet from the station like most roller coasters do. This was a positive change that actually reduced the wait time for trains to advance into the station even further. Trains took about 12 seconds to park in the station after the previous train was dispatched. So, what's the problem that I'm talking about? Well, this positive change only lasted for the 2022 season. For the 2023 season, and currently, the ride was slightly reprogrammed yet again, just 1 year after a major controls overhaul. For reasons that simply don't make sense to me, trains would once again park in the brake run at the safety brake. However, this time, trains would be held in the middle of the safety brakes and not begin to advance toward the station until the dispatching train fully engaged on the lift hill. It now takes trains a total of 22 seconds to park in the station after the previous train was dispatched. That's a 10-second increase from 2022 and a 9-second increase from its original programming. In this footage from 2024, you can see this in action. If you frequent theme parks or are a ride operator, you know that every second counts. This updated control programming is seriously killing Batman's throughput. Crews need to nail a perfect dispatch interval in order not to stack trains now. The current programming leads to less dispatches per hour, which consequently yields less people boarding trains, ultimately leading to significantly lower ridership. It's a complete domino effect. I would actually love to see the current ridership numbers to compare them to previous seasons, as I'm very familiar with Batman's usual numbers without this handicap. I'd also like to note that Batman doesn't have the greatest crew ever this year in 2025, but that's just circumstantial. During my time, Batman was routinely one of the top ridership performers each season. I'm sure that's still the case, as Batman is a capacity merchant at heart, but I doubt it's even near its full potential now. Consign, if you're watching this, please fix this issue. It's killing Batman's operations. Outside of the change of where the trains park, the 2022 reprogram didn't change much else about the way Batman's operated. The biggest change was the addition of a second dispatch enable button on the unload side of the platform, and the removal of a small remote control panel on the side of the operator booth. For many years, Batman operators did not dispatch trains from the main control panel. Rather, they dispatched trains on the platform via the remote control panel. This only featured a lock and unlock restraints button, along with a singular dispatch button. The removal of this panel relieved the main operator from other duties, including attending the exit gate and even checking restraints on the train. Also, the updated ride system saw the removal of the ride's photo eyes used to track the position of the train. Now, Batman solely relies on proximity sensors to monitor all aspects of the ride. When it comes to ride uptime and availability, Batman the Ride is as reliable as it gets. It's rare that you'll see Batman halt operations because of a mechanical issue with the ride. That just about sums up all there is to know about Batman's operations. In conclusion, Batman the Ride made a significant impact on the coaster industry. Jim Wintrode's collaboration with B&M to create an inverting suspended roller coaster totally shifted roller coaster innovation. Batman the Ride's success redefined what a thrill ride could be, leading to widespread replication. Batman played a critical role in establishing B&M as a leader in coaster manufacturing. Batman blended engineering innovation with immersive design and commercial success, setting new standards for what parks and manufacturers could achieve. Its legacy lives on not only in its many clones, but in the entire genre of inverted coasters and the direction of coaster design ever since. Jim Wintrode even stated that Batman was the highlight of his career. Highlight is an understatement. Batman the Ride is a bona fide masterpiece, still holding up 33 years later, thus making Batman the Ride B&M's most important roller coaster. If you have made it to the end of this video, I hope you were able to gain a deeper insight into the significance and greatness of the original inverted coaster, Batman the Ride, and I hope you learned something along the way. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like and leave a comment to show your support. And if you haven't already, make sure to go visit Six Flags Great America and take a lap on the historic Batman the Ride.
If a man is considered